Here today. Hope that the food was good. Certainly, we just want to share a little bit about what we're doing at the foundation, about our partner, Philanthrocorp, and we want to let you know what's going on with the children's home here in your backyard as well. At the foundation, we do three main things. Number one, we help families with estate planning and planning their legacies. And I should just turn it over to Brother Doug and let him share all about that, but we'll let him talk in a few minutes. The second thing we do is we help churches with investments. So we invest money in a biblically responsible way. We hope to grow that money for the kingdom. And we do it at a lower rate than you can get at your bank or locally. And third, we help with scholarships. We were talking yesterday with Ross, who was sitting with us at lunch. He had 3 kids who have gone through college and all benefited from our scholarships. And so, like we were talking about with seminary, if you have pastor friends that are going back to seminary, we can help with scholarships there, or kids going to college. But the thing we're most passionate about right now is our legacy planning. We've seen, I think we were talking yesterday, over close to 150 this year, this calendar year, that have gone through planning with us through our partners, Philanthrocorp. So not only are they getting their affairs in order, which is important to do just responsibly, but they're also being able to leave a legacy to their families and to their churches. And so that's, as pastors, what we want you to think about is, number one, have you thought about that in your own life? Have you taken that responsible step to steward what God has given you and thought about your legacy after you're gone? And second, how can you shepherd your people and teach them about the legacy that they can leave? Our dream and our hope is that in 15, 20 years down the road, we're seeing these gifts come to fruition that are funding missions all over the world, that are refurbishing those capital projects that we're doing right now, and we're not having to do big capital campaigns anymore because people have left a legacy to our churches. So at the foundation, we'll tell you a little bit about how we do that. We partner with churches to make it a no-cost planning process for your members. But I want to invite Dave Clifford to talk a little bit about that. Dave represents Philanthrocorp. We found out at the foundation about 10 years ago that we could do a lot of estate planning. Joey's one of our attorneys who does. But for us to really move the needle and affect a lot of families, we needed a partner to help us with that, and that's what Philanthrocorp does. They're a Christian estate planning firm, and they do all of our planning for our members. And so, David, if you'll share a little bit about you.
All right. A little bit of background. You guys don't know me. My name's House Cat. I moved into this area kind of back door. My first senior pastor was at a church down in Sarasota, Florida. A little group of about 50 people where we got together, and we began to grow. God just God's blessings, all I can tell you. I wake up every day and say, God, don't let me mess this up. We baptize over 100 people every year. I was preaching to about 1,000 folks when I left, and we baptized probably 50, I think it was over 55% of our members. So these are pagans. They didn't know anything about nothing. Of the other 45%, half of them were Southern Baptists, the other half were Episcopalians, Lutherans, Christian Missionary Alliance, you name it, that we had to, again, kind of bring them in the Baptist fold. Now, I share all this with you only because of the pilgrimage God took me on in this process, because I was there 7 years before we had a funeral. A lot of weddings, young families, a lot of weddings, a lot of child dedication, stuff like that, and a lot of credit card debt. Most of those families were in $20,000, $30,000 worth of credit card debt. And so I had to teach them, first of all, financial freedom. And of course, this is a process to teach them financial freedom. Then I had to teach them tithing. Then I had to teach them giving. And as we grew, I knew we had to build a building somewhere along the way. I did everything we could to not do that. But these folks couldn't give because they didn't have the ability to. So I went through those stewardship modules just trying to bring them all along because they get them financially free where they could do that. But then I was sitting in my office one day and it hit me. What about a lot of young men, a lot of young families here. One of these guys, and I was thinking in my mind of a fellow who was a pole climber for Florida Fire and Light. So he crawls up on that pole, he grabs the wrong wire, or somebody flips the wrong switch, and he doesn't know it. I mean, he's gone just like that, and he's got a wife and 4 kids. And that just impression, I think it was just God gave me that impression. I thought, what do we do? I mean, the church is going to have to step in because the family thinks that they've joined a cult, and they might not take care of them like they should. And what if a young couple gets killed in a car wreck? Who's going to take care of their kids? Just a lot of things like that. And I didn't have an answer for that. I knew how to teach tithing. I knew how to teach financial freedom. I knew how to lead in those things. But I was absolutely clueless when it came to legacies and the need for wills and trusts. And I'll tell you how great the need is. In secular work or in Christian, it didn't matter either way, over 70% of the people that you look at on Sunday morning do not have any kind of documents in place. Don't have a will or a trust. 70%. Now when you look at that, pastor, and I want to share this from a pastor's perspective, I'd speak to laymen a little differently, but you're a shepherd and you're responsible for those sheep.
Right.
And they have a need, and they've got a great need, and many of them don't even realize how great that need is. Now my dad died about 5 years ago, and I was after him for 3 years to get documents, get papers, stuff like that in place. We finally got a trust put together, a living will, those kind of things. But he had the pieces. It's kind of like tying your shoestring. He had the knot put together, but he didn't have it all pulled tight. And there was a lot of things missing. It took me 2 years to settle his estate, and then some banks wouldn't even talk to me. And I said, look, here's the documentation. Still wouldn't talk to me because they didn't have everything in place. Now, from my experience, even my own dad, I realized you just can't leave people out there hanging. And I looked, and so here's what I did as a pastor, young pastor. The story I told you was 30 years ago. And I said, I don't know how to meet this need. Well, I had some attorneys in my church. They said, we'll do it. Well, but the problem with them is they had a profit motive involved. They wanted business. They wanted George. And on the list goes. Well, I finally met a fellow in Liberty Baptist Church, Thomas Road Baptist Church, Jerry Fallo's church. And he did this kind of stuff, and I invited him to come down. And on a Sunday night, we're meeting in a school cafeteria, and I think we had 2 or 3 services that morning, and I just told him, tonight we're going to have a service, and it's not going to be a preaching time. We're going to talk about wills and trusts and that kind of thing. I thought we'd get back 20 people. Standing room only. They were standing around the room, and I thought, oh my goodness, the need here is much greater than I had any idea. Now, he started some of the planning, but the problem was he couldn't do enough of it. There's only one. And I think that's kind of what the Alabama Foundation came to. There just wasn't enough manpower. We couldn't hire enough people to do it well. So let's bring in some folks who have this area of expertise that can help us accomplish this training process. So I finally had to move away from that one fella, and now I didn't know what to do, guys. I'll be honest with you, I didn't know what to do. And it wasn't until I got with the International Mission Board that I got connected with Philanthrocorp. Now that's nearly 25, 30 years of ministry that's gone by, and I couldn't find an answer because everybody wanted to sell insurance, they wanted to manage your financial portfolio, they wanted to insurance, all kinds of profit motives. And what I needed as pastor, I didn't want my sheep sheared, I wanted my sheep cared for. So how do I meet a need with them without getting them sheared? Because again, my integrity as pastor and the church is on the line. And when it was with the IMB, it's the integrity of the board. We couldn't have some lawsuit go out there and say, hey, you unduly influenced my grandmother and she gave you your estate, you didn't leave our family with anything, and we get a lawsuit that we couldn't do that. So how do we accomplish this planning process and help people with a genuine need and yet keep the integrity of, in our case, the International Mission Board, in your case, the church? How do we keep the integrity of the church and the pastor's head off the chopping block? Well, that's what Philanthrocorp does. And what we do is we partner, in this case with the Alabama Foundation, and I got to brag on these guys. You got probably one of the best foundations in the whole Southern Baptist Convention. I think number 2 right behind them would be Nashville, the Southern Baptist Convention. Those guys are fabulous. And then I could go down the list, but I'm telling you, these guys are at the top of the list. And the way they partner with their churches and help your churches and people is an incredible opportunity. Now, let me tell you the kind of need that your folks have. Every family is different. This is one of those things that you can't use a cookie cutter template on. You can't just one size fits all. And so with this, with the need of every family being different, you've got to tailor make it, and you've got to understand what their need is. Now there's a couple of other things that we do because we're Philanthrocorp and we're a step removed from like the foundation or a step removed from your church, then there's a privacy thing involved. And people with money or businesses are just, in fact, most people don't want anybody in the church to know their business. They don't want anybody to know their business. I never looked at giving records. I never looked at once. I just wouldn't do that. But a lot of folks have been burned or hurt in a church because somebody let the horse out of the bag or out of the barn. So Philanthrocorp does this privately, personally. No one knows in the church what goes on. And in fact, you can't attract people with money to this if they think, if there's any possibility of you blowing its cover, their cover, about who they are, what they do. People with the gift of giving and people with a lot of assets, if you ever notice, they don't want any recognition. They give quietly, they give, people with the gift of giving, I've had a lot of folks just hand me, $100 bills and say, give that to that widow over there, and I've been the messenger of that a lot. But nobody else needed to know that. I mean, that's just the heart they put in them. So we do this it's private, and it's done over the telephone in a relationship. You think, how in the world can that happen? Well, I'm going to Doug share with you in just a minute kind of some of his experiences because he's, as a pastor, has firsthand experienced what has happened. Now, let me just turn my attention to you, pastors, for a moment. You need one of these plans too. You need to have a legacy plan in place. And you can't recommend this if you don't go through the process.
Right.
You need to go through the process so that you can, with integrity, say, folks, I've been through this. This works. You have a need, just like I had a need, and we've got a way of solving that for you. And I can't think, now, how good is free? Let's talk about free. You like that word free? We're talking about thousands of dollars worth of planning that the foundation is providing for your people free. Now, that's the best price in the world right there. The only thing they have to pay for is their attorney fees, and that's a fail-safe. That's important that they do that because by having their attorney that they choose and them paying the bill, it eliminates undue influence by the church or the pastor or anybody else because now they've had their own counsel look at it. So there's a lot of safety features built into this too. That in fact, in the 25 years that Philanthrocorp's been around, I asked the guys about this, about all the history, and they said they do not know of not one contested Philanthrocorp plan in court. It hadn't been tested. So there's a great deal of success behind this. And so these fellows right here, what they do is they're out here, they can multiply their efforts by trying to get folks involved and say, listen to us, we've got help for you. And then they step out of the picture and we come up behind them and pick up the dust. They go out here, they're kind of like Roadrunner, run across the desert, they stir up all the dust, we come on behind and settle it, all right? So you got roadrunners here running through the countryside here, stirring up the dust. And so we come behind them in the service. And so it's a great partnership. Now, let me share with you a couple of situations why it can't be a cookie cutter, go to the internet, fill out the form. Every family is different. You can, and people can ruin their kids and grandkids by leaving money to them. You can ruin them. I'll give you an example. There's a family right here in Alabama. I can't tell you where they live because you probably figure it out, but there's a doctor. And he had 3 kids. 2 of them are doctors who are married to doctors. third is a prodigal son. And here's what they told me. They said, we went to, our prodigal son, if we gave him $100 or $1 million, in a year's time it's going to be gone. Doesn't matter how much because we've given him money and it's gone. Gets wings and flies away, like Proverbs says. So, and besides that, he's living a prodigal life, and he's turned his back on Jesus. He's turned his back on everything that was dear to us, and we're not going to leave the money that God has given us to riotous living. So they went to the two doctors, married doctors, say, you know, we're not going to leave you anything because we've paid for your medical. Oh, Mom, Dad, you paid for school. You've got us to school. We don't have any debt. We're doing fine financially. No, don't include us in the will. So they were fine. Went to the prodigal son and said, son, we can't give you anything because you've turned your back on Christ. They left the bulk of their estate, their legacy plan, to the IMB. And they did that because we brought them to the table. We said, we have a way of helping you through this issue. Now, every family is different. In my wife's Sunday school class in Sarasota, Florida, this lady, Barbara, and her husband dated in high school, real close. Little brother couldn't drive yet, and so when they go out on dates, they take little brother with them and they go to the movies and stuff like that. Now, I wouldn't take my little brother when I would take my wife. Not at all. But that's how close they were. Well, her husband, this little ranch they got, it's 26 square miles in Central Florida. And he checked his herds of cattle on an airplane. So he flies the airplane around, look, and he checked his orange grove, stuff like that. Well, he hit a tree or something and died. Left behind this estate. And little brother, who's this close to them, sues her for half of the ranch. After over $100,000, I don't know, it was way up in six figures of legal expenses. The judge says, no, little brother, you're entitled to nothing. This all belongs to this widow. And she told me this. I'm sitting at lunch with her. And she says, I turned and looked at little brother and said, what? As they're walking out of the courthouse, she turns around, points at the courthouse, says, what was that all about? He says, well, I didn't have anything to lose. And I could have gained a lot if the judge would have given me the money. Now, you know what they did? That destroyed a family relationship.
Oh, yeah.
Because what she said, if you needed money, all you had to do was ask. I would have given you whatever you needed.
Yeah.
But destroyed a family relationship. And that's what happens. You've got some grandkids that people have enough assets, they leave trust funds behind for college or something like that. You ever known a trust fund kids who say, you know, they just go through college, they're drunk and everything else, I mean, losing all morals, and they say, well, I don't have to work or have to go to college because when I'm 21 I get this trust fund and I can do whatever I want to. And you could ruin your family members. That's why a plan is so important. And your people know that. You've got people in your church that have businesses that need to be sold because the kids, although they were trained and they were fed and grew up and the business took care of them, they don't want anything to do with it. Mom, Dad, I don't care. That printing business, we don't want anything to do with. We hate it, okay? And so here's somebody that needs to sell a business. Well, we can help them design a plan that basically turns the tax burden into gifts, into charitable gifts. Now, I might ask this, pastors, how many of you have gotten any charitable gifts in your church in the last 10 years? How much? How many? If only one or two, it's probably because you haven't helped your folks plan and nobody's asked them. And one thing we do is ask. And it's simple like this. We don't have them be required to give. We don't ask them to give. But when we ask this question, have you considered the kingdom ministries that have depended on you all these years? Have you thought about what you want to leave for the kingdom? And they're more than generous. They're more than generous. They're going to leave to the church. They're going to leave ministry to things like this ministry you talk about that buys ultrasounds. You know, because they want their ministry and their life to mean something more even after they have died. So that's what a plan can do. A legacy plan can help them. And every person is different. Every Every family's different. They had a gentleman in Southwest Missouri, severely autistic grandson. At 15, they would find him in a neighbor's house going through the canned goods in the kitchen. Well, now the neighbors all knew him and everything. It's one thing when you're 15. But now, 5 years later, when he's 22, or 7 years later, about 20, 21, 22 years old, for him to do that, he's going to get shot. Somebody's going to kill him. And so this man said, I have to leave everything in my estate to institutionalize this boy because there's nobody else in the family and no other way he can be taken care of. So every family's different. Every need is different. Some kids shouldn't get anything. And like this autistic grandson, he's going to get everything just because of his need. He doesn't know it. He doesn't know anything about it because he's so autistic. But every family, and that's what we do, is we help people work through their plans. The first phone call, it's all done via the phone. First phone call is tell me who you are, what are your dreams, what are your interests, what are the things that you have given to, what are the ministries that are important to you, that you have supported for years and years. And when we find out what their dreams and directions are, then we begin to put together a plan for them. And that takes a series of months. It may take, if they do everything on time and respond quickly, in as little as 3 or 4 months, we can have a plan put together for them. Sometimes it's drawn out more if they got to do a little more homework or they miss an appointment. So anywhere from 3 months to 6 months, we can get a plan put together for them. It's given to them in a portfolio, and that portfolio is given to their attorney and to their CPA. The CPA looks at it, be sure it's financially good for them. The attorney looks at it and says, attorney, this is what this family wants to do. You need to turn this now into Alabamese, okay? So whatever the state of residence is for those families, we need to get an attorney that turns it into a legal document for the state of residence. And so whenever they get that together, now Philanthrocorp will stick with them. We'll give that to the attorney and to the CPA. And then we're going to stick with that family until they finally sign, because until they pull out the pen and sign the document, it means nothing.
Right.
They have to sign it. And here's what the men will do. Here's what you'll do to your wife. Is you go, your wife will say, sign, 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 sign. And you go, if I sign this, I'm going to die. Okay, I'm going to die. Yes, you're going to die. The mortality rate is still 100% in it, you know. The mortality rate of everybody in the room is 100%. And I tell folks, just sign something. Get something in place for your family. You can always change it. You can always change it. And some folks will tell you this. Some of you people in your church say, well, I've already done that. Okay, you may have already done it, but you've had a secularly trained attorney or CPA that's helped you do that. They haven't thought about the kingdom. We were talking about that yesterday.
That's right.
You did for what? How many years? 10 years you were doing?
14, 15.
14, 15 years. Trained secularly, and it wasn't until he got connected with the foundation all of a sudden realized, wait a minute. What about the kingdom? And it's no fault, it's just the way they were trained. And here's the way they think.
Is that when he became a saved lawyer?
That's right.
Yeah, that's right.
No, unfortunately, not unfortunately, but I was saved the whole time, just not thinking about it.
Yeah.
Because
you don't think. You think you got 4 kids,
Yeah.
divided the estate 1, 2, 3, 4 ways, boom, that's it. We decided, you know. But what we do is we come at it from a biblical kingdom world-like view. And we ask them, say, okay, you're going to take care of your kids, but what about the ministries that have been dependent on you? Okay. So those are the things we do. Doug, you had quite a bit of experience with some of your church and family. Why don't you share your testimony with us?
Well, we just finished March 20-something. We just finished our first year with Philanthrocorp. And let me just go on record. Number one, I'm thankful, so very thankful to the foundation. I mean that. Alabama, SPC Alabama is A+. And thank you guys. Now, the way we were set up, and you may have something different in a year, but we paid for the first 12 at $2,000. That was $24,000. And of course, we only paid for them as they got completed. And then after that, everything was totally covered then by the foundation, covering all the expenses. And so what my goal was, well, I tried to think about a lot of stuff. Well, I love what all you said. But every pastor listening here, and brother, I know you're working with all the pastors in our association. If this will work for your church, and it will work, if you can answer one question correctly. What do you want for your people versus what do you want from your people? Now, if you want for your people what Dave just shared, this will work. Now, what you're going to get from your people is going to be a blessing of God.
Yeah.
I sat 2 years ago, be 3 years this coming November, and I sat in a board meeting, and we had a guy from the group that Chuck Swindoll's with. You said him a minute ago. Who's he with? What denomination? You got
Evangelical Free.
Yeah, Evangelical Free. And the guy was from Evangelical Free, and he was talking to us about, what estate planning and donating and all you could do. And I'm sitting there, 64 years old, saying, why in the name of heaven am I just now hearing about this? Why? So when I came back home, I got what I considered financial savvy men in our church together, and we began to research this, and that's then when we got it with Nathan, and found out what Alabama Baptist offers us, and I'm telling you, it's incredible. It's incredible. But what do you want for your people? To give you, for example, a young couple like you, Dave, was referring to, they're not going to leave you much right now, but God only knows what's going to happen 40 years from now, because our wealth is never dependent upon our paychecks. Your wealth is what's accumulated, okay? And so if I'm wanting to help that young couple, that their kids are taken care of, their house is in order. By the way, biblically, that's what Dave said. That's what we're supposed to do. And then at the same time, think about this for the generous people in your church. I got to thinking about this the other day, talking to one of our ladies who's a CPA, 70 years old, just now finishing up with Philanthrocorp. And I just called to follow up and see how she's doing. And it dawned on me, and I wept like a baby. But the greatest gift Katie and I will give to the King will be our last gift.
That's right.
And when he gets it, we'll be in his presence. Wow, I got to think about that. And the last gift will be our greatest gift, and when he receives it, we'll be in his presence. And listen, Philanthrocorp, they're not pushy. Lord have mercy. I mean, if I'd want you to push a little more than you push, but they don't push. Honestly, they don't push. Now, the good thing, they work with the pastors. And what they do with me, now they may not, you guys may not do it to everybody, but I've asked for a list of people that are, for whatever reason, slowed down in the process. And really, men especially, you alluded to it, we don't like doing this, because it's almost like, if I do this, I die tomorrow, and it's procrastination of this. And but these guys don't push. And then what I do is the fact that because our people know I don't want something from them. Now, if they think you want something from them, this won't work.
That's right.
And your head will be on the chopping block. That's what. But if they really know that you want something for them, and you've done it, and you can say this is for you, then, my situation, I can call and say, how's it going? You got a problem? What needs to be done? And the Philanthrocorp has been great. Of course, Alabama Baptist Foundation has been wonderful. And guys, I just sat back and marvel at the fact that I went through 40 years of ministry and didn't even know this was available. Now, I will say I knew about Dr. Falwell, but usually when those guys came in, they left a big hunt to Liberty University. Not much happened for the good local Baptist church, but the university's done really, really well. But the bottom line is, this is available to you. I hope that you'll do it for your people.
How long have you been in it? A year? What is the value of the gifts that people have said we're gonna leave?
Well, we're over $3 million now.
Over $3 million in its gift expectancies. Now, I had a Christian university president just 2 weeks, and this university president, he said, what's the difference between a legacy gift and, because he's been raising money for building and scholarships now, because that's what pays the bill now. And I said, well, you're asking for the money that's in people's pockets right now that they can pull out of bank accounts, liquid money. What we're dealing with is their entire estate, everything. It's like Doug said, when we step into eternity, we're not going to take anything with us. But we're asking you to take everything that God has given you in a lifetime and consider what you're going to do for your family, what you're going to do for the kingdom, And the greatest gift, the biggest gift that we'll probably give in our lifetime to missions is going to be at our death. So, and by the way, I had another university president, he said this, he says, the only problem with you guys, he says, whenever they sign on the line, he says, I think they get 10 more years of life. He says, none of them are dying. None of them are dying. I said, well, no. But so important what he said. This is, your sheep have a need out there. They've got a tremendous need.
That's right.
And you've got to help them. And Philanthrocorp, we do not sell any insurance. We don't ask to manage your portfolio. We're not stockbrokers. We're not saying let us manage this or that. We have no profit motive in this at all. Our relationship with the foundation and the church takes care of us so that we can help your people. And if they have given regularly, let's say like to the children's home, well, when they're gone, that gift's not coming anymore. So why don't you leave something behind to the children's home that's going to take up that slack that they're missing? If you gave $20,000 a year and now you're gone and they're not going to get that 20, why don't you leave behind with the foundation funds that'll make that up so that they keep getting that revenue? And that's just helping folks think through, what can I do? So the price is right. And these guys are great. You need to use them, okay?
Well, get out tomorrow because put it with them.
Yeah.
You're going to get a better rate, and you can't get a better people than you're doing with. And thank you guys.
When people invest with us, it helps us to fund these kind of things.
Oh
So,
yeah.
as Doug mentioned, we join with each church in different levels. So depending on the size of your church, Doug's working at a large church, so they pay for a few cases a year, 12 cases a year. Some churches don't pay for anything. We pay for everything for them. So we'll just talk specifically about that. Well, we mentioned in your legacy plan, leaving it to ministries you love. And so we partner with the ministry we love at the children's home that's in your backyard and doing some really exciting things. And so for your churches who are looking to be active in ministries locally and or give to, this is a great place to do it. So Rod, tell us about what's going on at Children's Home.
Thanks, Nathan. You guys know Decatur, so I'm going to ask Dr. Michael Smith if you would just give us an update on what's going on on your campus.
So, yeah, thank you guys for coming and listening. I would say first that my wife and I are also going through this process. We are hoping to finalize the guardianship. That's been the big issue for us, is who would take care of our kids. And so if I die today, you won't get a big check today, but maybe in 40 years.
Will I get your kids?
Somebody's got to run the campus. So I would just encourage you to do it because it's just such a relief to us to know that we have that plan. Very small cost to have it, taken care of by the attorney. But on our campus in Decatur, I know a lot of y'all support us and know a lot about what we do. We're currently in a building project. If you've not been by, we're adding another emergency shelter to our campus. We will be able to take in 8 more girls that are from emergency situations. That shelter care home allows us to provide stability for kids that are being removed from care kind of on the spur of the moment. No one knows where they're going to go. And it gives us about 60 to 90 days to figure out what is the best option for that child. Can we identify a family member that would be better at taking care of them? Do they need to go into one of our longer term homes? Do we have a foster home in the community? It just it keeps that kid from bouncing from place to place. Because what so often happens in our state child welfare system is if a child gets removed from their home, they may spend 2 nights at one foster home because that's all they can keep them, and they may bounce to another. And sometimes, by the time they actually land somewhere safe and semi-permanent, they've been through 3 or 4 placements. And that's just bad for kids. Every time they get separated from somebody is another traumatic experience for them. So we're excited about adding that. Hope you'll come by and see that. You can drive by and see the construction. Our foster care program continues to grow. We are currently caring for about 60 kids total based out of the Decatur area. That includes our campus, foster care, and our college care program. We have 2 in college right now and 3 more entering the fall. So we'll have 5. A lot going on, not only in Decatur, but statewide. The growth that we've been experiencing in the number of foster homes we have and the number of children needing those homes, it is really significant, double digit into the 20% range. Just last month, we had a 10% growth in the number of foster homes we had statewide. So we're following those numbers. I think it's certainly more expensive to do what we do than it's ever been. Even with good partners that discount a lot of things for us, it's still more expensive to care for kids. But I think the cost of doing it now, as opposed to the cost of what losing those children to drugs, alcohol, abuse, prison, the cost to society, I think we're very short-sighted if we don't think about the value of the investment now. So I just encourage y'all. I'll be glad to answer any questions if anybody has any about the Decatur campus.
Maxwell says one of the qualities of leadership is leaders see a big picture than other people, and they see further down the road. So put on your leadership hats. Right now there are about 6,000 children in the state's foster care system. So you know our culture, you know our families, you know our society. 25 years from now, do you think there will be more or less kids in need of foster care? More? Okay. Something happened last year that we don't think has ever happened in our history. Last year, for the first time ever, individual gifts were greater than church gifts. There are approximately 3,200 Alabama Baptist congregations. I'm told that 70% of those are either plateaued or declining, and only 30% of those are growing. So again, put on your leadership hat. 25 years down the road, will we have more growing Baptist congregations or fewer growing Baptist congregations? And I understand revival could happen. I pray for it every day. But short of a spiritual awakening and a great revival in our state, will we have more or less healthy growing Baptist churches 25 years from now? Probably going to have fewer. And what I have observed, I don't know which is the chicken and which is the egg, but churches that are declining do not support missions, and churches that don't support missions are in decline. So churches that are struggling, they may love the children's home. They're not going to love them financially. So we have to look at other sources of income, or we have to begin now figuring out how we exit the space that we've served in for the last 127 years. I'm not ready for us to exit that space. And so we're going to have to be dependent on other sources of income in the future, whereas churches have always been our strongest area of support. And one of those in 25 years, I believe that when it's needed most, estate gifts are going to come through. Paul Miller, who was my predecessor, the week before he retired, he came by my office and he had an envelope in his hand and he said, "This is an exciting envelope. You should be excited about this envelope." And then in the envelope was a check for over $1 million. It's from a farmer down in Phoenix City. And it just so happened that my wife's cousin was that farmer's Sunday school teacher. And so he called me and he said, "I just wanted to know, what do you know about this guy?" I said, "I don't know much of anything about this guy." He said he was in World War II. When he got out of World War II, he bought a farm. And he worked that farm his whole life, and he had no idea that the value of the land on his farm was going up exponentially. He drove an old truck. He wore the same suit to church every Sunday. And even once people stopped wearing suits and ties, he still wore that same suit to church every Sunday. And once a year, he would load up his truck with cleaning supplies, and he would drive to the Dothan group home and drop off those cleaning supplies. That was the extent of his involvement in our ministry. We had no record of him ever giving financially. He just bought cleaning supplies and took it to Dothan. When he died, his wife predeceased him. They had no children, and his entire estate came to the children's home, a little over $1 million.
Amen.
Praise the Lord.
That's going to continue to happen at the time when we need it most, because God knows when our days are numbered, and God knows the number.
That's right.
God knows when your church is going to need those $3 million in gifts. God knows when the children's home is going to have to make difficult decisions about growing programs or cutting programs, serving more kids or serving fewer kids, working in a more hostile environment and still being effective at it, or not being effective. God knows those things. And so God has begun working in the lives of families. They may not even know it's God who's working in those lives. And yet, they will stand before the throne. And like the parable of the talents, God will say, what did you do with those talents I entrusted to you? And they'll be able to say, we invested them wisely. And the kingdom work that we believed in has extended long after we have died. And God will say, well done, good and faithful servant. And the Children's Home is so deeply indebted to our partnership with the Baptist Foundation, our partnership with Philanthrocorps, that every day is helping us to prepare for 25 years from now, 50 years from now. Kids who have not been born yet, who are going to be born in really difficult places, who are going to find themselves in really difficult circumstances, who are going to need to know that God, their Heavenly Father, cares for them deeply. And it'll be the Baptist Children's Home that will be the face of the gospel for those children. So seeds will be planted, and they'll become adults, and they'll remember in their hardest day, Alabama Baptists were there for them, because of folks who aren't going to be around to see the end of that story. But I believe they will see the end of that story. So thank you so much for your support. The Baptist Children's Home started in Evergreen, Alabama, then we moved to Troy. If you look at our history book, it says that one of the reasons we moved to Troy is the level of Baptist support was not as strong as we believed it to be in South Alabama. But you guys already knew that. If we'd started in Decatur, we'd still be on our original campus, because the level of support in North Alabama is outstanding. Michael mentioned his Christmas open house. It is an unbelievable event. Buses line up. How many people? 2,000, 3,000 people show up. We don't do that open house as a fundraiser, and yet people come in and they drop checks off and they drop money off, and it's a huge fundraiser for us. We are so appreciative of the support we get in North Alabama, and we try to replicate it across the state. We haven't figured out the secret yet. And maybe it's the white barbecue sauce.
It's us Appalachians.
There's something in North Alabama that we're not having in other parts of the state. We're deeply, deeply appreciative of all that you do for the children in this area and for the children across the state. So God bless you, and thanks so much.
Thanks, Rob. If your church wants to get involved in doing something, they can't just talk to Michael. If you want to give, talk to Jay. Right, Jay? Jay handles it.
I'll take money, Jay.
Yes, anybody can.
Nathan, can I say just one thing?
You may.
But you guys are pastors here. You know, I just, you know, you'd asked me to tell our story.
Mm-hmm.
Now, you know, I'm not a mathematician or son of a mathematician, but I realized after 12, everything's free. And so we've signed up about 120 families.
We wrote a big check to Philanthrocorps this year. I'm happy to do it. Glad to.
Oh, yeah, but and one of the things that's a blessing is that we have families like what you're referring to with no children that have left wonderful gifts for us. They left gifts for the foundation.
That's right.
For IMB.
That's right.
You know, the thing about it is, guys, it's kingdom. It's big.
Yeah.
And if my heart's right, that I'm doing what I'm doing for my people, then the results of what comes from my people will happen. And there's no, you know, they're just thankful.
Yeah.
And I have people now that just say, man, thank you, preacher, thank you. And what's incredible is these young couples, and think about 70%. Who's gonna get the kids?
That's right.
Who's gonna
That's
take care
right.
of the kids?
That's right.
You know, what's gonna happen? And, you know, good, 9/11, what you're gonna do for them?
Oh.
And then your people that are generous already, you're just gonna give them an opportunity to be even greater, blessed in a greater way for the Lord. And then philanthropy, one thing with me, you know, our son committed suicide. And so we raised our grandson from 10 years old, he's 24 now. But that caused conflict because I have 4 grandchildren. But the one grandchild ceased to be a grandchild, became a son. And I was explaining to my daughter the other day, you know, when he was a grandchild, I never whipped him. When he became a son, I had to beat the dog out of him. You know, he's a typical boy, you know. So
There's the illustration.
the dynamics change, you know. But how do we take care of the end of life and what we want to do for the Lord and for our family? You know, do I take my daughter, the only living child we have, and then this one grandson gets the same thing? Now I've just got more family problems, but Philanthrocorp literally walked us through how to save our family after we die. Literally, how to blend it, and you know, because I'm telling you, any other way it would have been bad news. And I would have never thought of that, but Philanthrocorp helped us do it. So, guys, I just encourage you, and you know, I realize you got all these guys, and you know, really, the table should have been full of pastors wanting to know how I can help my people. And you're going to just have to campaign how to, you know, because you will be helping your people.
Yeah.
You know, and I encourage you, but check your heart. Check your heart at the door. If I'm just doing this because I'm wanting what I'm going to get, they'll sense it. You know.
That's right.
But if they know you're doing this because for, and one last thing, and Dave, you talked about it. No, we've already done that. Well, here's what's beautiful about Philanthrocorp. They will take anybody in your church who's, quote, already done that. And what I said to them, especially the older families, it didn't cost you anything. Just let Philanthrocorp look at it. And if everything's in order, Philanthrocorp will tell them, it's in order, you're good to go. And if it needs changing, then they'll help them. And that's a gift.
Can I share a story about that? That's important.
Quickly, yes.
Since he's taking it. The first person at the IMB put through the training, or the counseling, was a fellow who is a marketing vice president for Southland Corporation in Dallas, Texas, 7-Eleven. Genius financially in numbers and everything. And we asked him, is it Jim and Patty, no kids at all. So would you go through this training, because if we're going to start offering Philanthrocorp services, I want to be sure it works. Oh, Dave, he said, we've already done it. We just prepared our stuff. In fact, we prepared our legacy plan within the last year. It's not even 12 months old. And I said, all the more reason, would you at least go through it for us?
Yeah.
Just give them your documents, let them look at it. And so they did. They gave Philanthrocorp, our planner, all their documents. Now the first phone call was, who are you? What are your dreams? What do you want to see happen? What are your goals? He read through the documents and said, Jim, Patty, your documents are all good, except there's one sentence in this document and one sentence in this document that negate everything that you've set out. Cancels it all out. He read it and he goes, oh my goodness, you're right. And he struck it out, initialed it, done it. That's all it took. That's why having plans reviewed is very helpful too, because it'll help folks with things. And in fact, he blew the attorney cover yesterday. He gave, by saying attorneys start with templates. No, they do. Everybody does. You start with a template. And the guy went through and did all the template work and forgot 2 sentences. So that's why it's good to have another set of eyes looking at it. Some of the best financial minds. So this is good advice here too. And one last thing for pastors, why should people give to your church? You need to think about vision. What are you going to do? you get a $2 million gift. What are you gonna do with that? Sagemont in Houston, they get a check twice a year, I think. By the way, I don't know, they deposit all their money, $30 million with you guys, I'm not sure. But I know they get a check periodically, and the executive pastor said, man, I get more money back every year than we ever spend with Philanthropy Corp. He says, oh my goodness, he says, it's talk about being on the positive side, we are. But they give that check and then they look and say, okay, missions, what do we want to do? They use theirs for how are we going to impact the world?
That's right.
And that's over and above their regular gifts. So, you got to have a vision, Pastor.
Just one comment I would say, two things I gathered out of this, I want to give you comments about this. One is for benefits for our churches and really for the people in our churches. One is that they have a plan, they don't die without it.
That's right.
That's right.
That leads to a family breakup.
That's number one, really.
That we've all seen.
Responsibility, yeah.
That's number one.
The other thing, I think, Dave, you mentioned this when you first started talking. You talked about instead of paying taxes to the government, you financially help people financially arrange their finances in such a way that the kingdom gets that.
That's right.
Well, I think that's a benefit not only to the kingdom, but to the church, that you're contributing to the kingdom of God, to the kingdom of the devil.
That's right.
And so those two things are the two things that stand out to me about what I've heard. Is that correct?
That is correct, yeah.
Both of those are benefits.
Yeah, a lot of people would say, I don't have an estate worthy of an estate tax, and they probably don't. But if my wife and I were to pass away, all of our retirement savings,
Yeah.
if they were passed to our kids, would be taxed at probably 40%, 30 to 40%. So almost half of it's gone before it goes to my kids. What if I could give that money away to my church and the children's home?
Yeah.
My kids get the same thing or more. So, yeah.
Guys, this is an incredible gift. Honestly, it's a gift.
All I had to do was buy Doug's dinner, and he says all these nice things.
I mean, listen, I
Plus $3
you
million
know, I
of
was
gifts.
Dave today, and I serve on the board of a very large organization that he was having conversation with the main people to, and I'm telling everybody everywhere I got, hey, man, why would you? It's like those lepers, over in Old Testament. We down here eating, there's people back up there starving to death. Why not?
Yeah.
Why not help them? And it just, I'm telling you, what's beautiful with this is Alabama Baptist Foundation makes it easy.
They do.
They make it easy. Now, I've got a friend of mine that is in New Jersey, and we're talking with, I've got him and Dave Kingsley
Oh, yeah.
together on that. But see, he has no foundation with it. But we're, Philanthropy Corp's going to work with him, but they have no foundation. And he's Southern Baptist, but the New York group he's with, they don't do anything like this. And so, we don't, honestly, I came from an independent background. And I say to guys all the time, we don't even have a clue how blessed we are with what Alabama Baptist has, right? And I mean, it's phenomenal. It's phenomenal. So I didn't look at any of the monies that we agreed on. It's and another thing with Philanthropy's 1 to 40. For every $1 you invest, you'll get 40 at least. Now, if I was a stockbroker and I could guarantee you that, would you do business with me? I just want to ask you a question. Would you do business? If you wouldn't do business with me, you're not smart enough to eat lunch. But it's,
So you get money in.
I love it when people work for that.
Joey, say for ourselves, we'll let these guys go.
Let's pray. Oh, we do thank you so much for the time that you've given us today, and we know that you direct people's steps, and the people that are here are the ones we needed to talk to today, that we needed to fellowship with. So we trust you completely. We know you're sovereign over our lives and every aspect of it. And God, we just thank you for the ministries that are represented here, Lord, these churches, these pastors who strive every day, every Sunday, every Wednesday, and all through the week to study and to prepare to preach and to speak truth to their people. Lord, for the children's home representatives who are here, we just thank you for them. Lord, we know the work that they're doing is just so important. Lord, I just thank you so much for what they do. We love them, and I thank you for Dave being here from Philanthrocorp. Lord, I'm just thankful that you've given us opportunities to work in your ministry for the larger cause of bringing people to Christ. And that's really what we want to do. It's not about money, it's not about notoriety, it's not about anything other than being faithful stewards.
Yes.
So that other people years down the road, hundreds of years down the road possibly, will come to Christ because of something that happens today. And Lord, I pray that you allow us to be a part of that over and over and over again. Be with us as we depart from this place. Keep us safe in your care. In Christ's name. Amen.
Amen.